Oh, well, good morning, everyone. It's amazing to have everyone so early in the morning here on a Saturday. It's wonderful to see everyone here. It's an absolute privilege for us all this morning to have Andre and Jen Webster with us. They're a pastoral couple from the Cape, and we are just so excited to hear what they have to share with us this morning. It's really something that Michelle and I are so interested in finding about more, and just get ourselves sink our teeth into it a little bit more. So I'm just going to hand over to Michelle. She's going to do a bit of a preamble to the meeting.
And the preamble comes with a trigger warning.
Yeah.
And every single time we do one of these things, we've got people that are triggered. And what we want to say is a trigger is not a bad thing. We actually want you to realize that a trigger is actually something that is actually a good thing. It's a highlight to you to say, hey, I need either some love in this area. I need to chat to you about some wounds. I need some compassion. I need to get deeper insight into my story. I need to build myself with empathy and connection with myself and with my partner. And so I know in one of the previous sessions, and even in the session that we gave on sex and intimacy, there were so many people with triggers. And we don't want to give the Saturday morning where there's no triggers. We don't just want to be surface level. We don't just want to go, it will be okay. We want to go deeper. We want to deal with the triggers. We want to go, okay, you're triggered in this area. What do we do about it? What do we do?
Fix it?
How do we fix it? So, for example, if you and your partner go on separate holidays, for example, and you are triggered in this, it's not a case of we've got to throw the relationship away. It's a case of coming together and saying, I'm feeling disconnected.
Yeah.
I'm feeling unloved. What can we do about this? And you use that trigger to draw the two of you closer. It's like Bev said in our previous session. She says that bridge of connection where we come together. We each come with our own two things. And that point of connection we're looking for. And what brings us to that point of connection? So the preamble with the trigger warning for today is that we're going to explore deeply personal and sensitive topics. They're going to include sex. They're going to include sexuality, nakedness, trust, secrecy, shame, and sexual betrayal. And if you're a married spouse, some of this content is going to be triggering, or it's going to be emotionally overwhelming. We want you to remember it's not a sign of weakness. It's your nervous system signaling that a part of you still needs to care. You need healing. You need understanding. You need to be seen. Your opinion needs to be seen. It needs to be heard. It needs to be valued. And this is a supporting environment. And so we want to explore all these triggers. We are going to encourage you, like, speak to your significant other, speak to your Bev, speak to your Maria, speak to your Tabitha, your Estelle, your Thomas, your Kenneth, speak to them, because the moment it's verbalized, the moment it's out, there's something you can get the handles, you can talk it through, you get support of people coming around you, you get people that showing you that they genuinely care and they genuinely love you. And that's what we're wanting with this. It does come with a disclaimer.
There's always T's and C's. T's and C's apply everywhere. So even in this, we're going to have some T's and C's. So I'll just read the disclaimer to you. It says, the content shared in this session is for educational and support purposes only. While we strive to create a safe and respectful place, Grace Online cannot be held responsible for any emotional distress, discomfort, or relational tension that may arise during or after the session. Please participate at your own discretion and seek professional help if needed. Your healing matters, your safety matters, and your voice matters. So yeah.
And then I just want to say, like, we do this on a monthly basis because we want to feed into relationships. We want your relationships to work. We really, really do. And one of the things that we've had the most pushback against is when it comes to talking about sex and intimacy, because of those triggers, because of this is a a sex addiction group that we are opening up for couples to grow closer. But it is one of those things where we have had the back against. And we, as much as we're getting pushed back against, we are pushing into it because we know how good, and we know how good it is for us. And so this is what we want to understand, that we're coming from a point of view that we care for your relationships. We want them to work. We really, really do. We've got a friend, a group, not a group, a couple that we're very good friends with. And he had a problem with his health in his brain. The desire for sex has been turned off. And so he has to take medication for. But his wife, before this happened, said to herself, you know, if I never have sex for the rest of my life, it's okay. It's not something I miss. And she is the one that is crying and going, I'm missing that. I'm missing the connection. I'm missing the intimacy. I'm missing that. And so in theory, when you're fighting about sex so much, it's a point of contention in your relationship. Understand that if it wasn't there, you would actually miss it. You come together in that intimate space. It's that dynamic that only the two of you have, that only the two of you share with each other. So we are pushing forward on this. We are wanting to talk about this. We are wanting you to communicate about this. And so do you want to introduce Jen?
Yeah, so once again, let me introduce Andre and Jen Webster to all of you. So they're a pastoral couple from the Cape. They deal with this. Andre is a sexologist. So he's qualified. He knows exactly what goes in where and what nuts and bolts work together. I suppose I shouldn't say what that is. But in any case, so Andre and Jen, we're going to hand over to you to start. Thank you very much and welcome.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kevin and Michelle, and to Kenneth as well. Just want to say it's just been a really good experience to get to know this team, Grace Online. And what a privilege to be able to share on this platform. And also, we just want to say thank you to everybody that's here, that we can actually enter into a very sensitive part of your life. And we don't take that for granted. We understand that deep emotions are connected to our sexuality and sex. And so we in no way want to trigger that, but we do want to create, as our title says, a secret path to trust again around sex. Because, yeah, trust is everything. Trust is so important when it comes to the sexual act. And it's really our desire and our prayer that today you get some keys as to how you can build trust again, how you can actually create a safe environment in your home, in your bedroom, in your relationship especially, so that you can appreciate each other in every aspect of your being, your spirit, soul, and your body, because we are created that way. So I think just our disclaimer is that we are Christians. So we're going to say that, and that we carry a biblical worldview on healing as well as on trust and how to actually become intimate. So we will be using scripture. And I do want to say that a biblical worldview covers a lot of worldviews. And so you can learn something in the process. So to start off with, worldview, or a healthy worldview for trust and healing, is, we've got to understand that when the Creator made this earth, the pinnacle of his creation was mankind. And he said, you are sacred because you are made in my image. So all human life is sacred. We've got to understand that. Human life has dignity. It is interwoven in its being, and it is beautiful. It is sacred. Then everything that was made is good. Whatever was made, it was seen and it was spoken out. It is good, it is good, it is good. All right? then we are going to speak to our fathers, our father Adam and our mother Eve, and we're going to really, find out what was your case, really, because all that was good, all that was sacred fell, and it fell a long way. It had the capacity to be really, really ugly and very, very dark. And unfortunately, that's where we live at the moment. We live in this in-between time between two kingdoms. And we shouldn't be surprised that there is darkness. But, and this is a huge but, everything is redeemable. Everything can be saved. Absolutely everything. There is nothing that is too far gone, too far hurt, too far damaged that cannot be saved. And that we've got to realize. And then finally, we're not just redeemed to be happy, nice people. We're actually redeemed to transform our world. And if we can realize whatever healing we receive is not just for ourselves, it's for the world to be changed. It's for South Africa to become a nation that does not have gender-based violence statistics as it has at the moment, because we are all wanting to see the changes. So that's a basic worldview for trust and healing. Now we're going to be looking at a concept called covenant. Now, covenant is a beautiful promise that was given by our Creator, and it was made by Him and given to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden first, okay? And a covenant is different to a contract that we sign when we get married. A covenant, if you want to think of it, it is actually a promise written in blood, and it costs something, and it is there, and it is meant to last forever, because it's actually written not only in the spirit, in the physical, it is also written in the spirit. And so it's so helpful to know what is a covenant, because if we are going to create safe spaces out of which we can then explore our sexuality, we've got to know it. So God made a covenant with mankind, and He said it is a rugged commitment to us that is not circumstantially driven. No matter whether we are up or down, it is not circumstantial. God will have this rugged commitment with us. This covenant that He makes with us is for now. It is for the present. The beautiful thing about God is that He wants to actually heal all our pasts so that our future is dealt with. And we've got to know that we can live in the present, because God is a God of the present. His covenant is for the present. All right? And then it's always advocating. And I just love the way of seeing this. God is always in our corner. Wouldn't it be good for us to always know we have each other in our corners? I have Jen in my corner. She has me in her corner. But the greater knowledge is that we have God in our corner. He is backing us. And then covenant is always transformational. It's always believing the best, and it's always wanting the best to come out of a circumstance, our marriage, me as a person in my faith with God. So these are four beautiful things around covenant which create safety in which we can have relationship and eventually enjoy the sexual act. So obviously God made covenant between Himself and man. Then man makes covenant between ourselves and God. When we actually give our lives to God, when we choose to make Him Lord, we are saying we are making covenant with you. And in that process, we receive all of those beautiful things that are covenant for ourselves. But we are also saying, God, we are going to walk the rough road with you. We're not going to leave you. We are going to choose to live in the present with you. We're not going to allow our past to define us. We're not going to allow the future to define us or our fear of it. Okay, and all those kinds of things. And then finally, we have covenants between people. And marriage is one of those covenants. All right, and in a marriage covenant, we are meant to uphold all of this ruggedness that our marriage covenant is for now. It is advocating and it is transforming. So those two things, that biblical, or we want to say sorry, this is going back and forth, which is not helpful. So this worldview creates safety. This understanding of covenant also creates a safety for us to live in, and to know that when we've got these things in our lives, we can actually have safety. So let's just look at sex within covenant. Okay.
So when Andre teaches the high school kids about covenant,
Mm.
often he takes a delicate glass jar, say a fishbowl kind of thing. And then what you do is that you put things within that. So a covenant exists to hold you safe. So what he puts in the glass jar, he'll take ping pong balls, and then the one you put in there, sex. The other one is your family. The other one is your marriage, your work, your finances. Covenants, our lives involve so many things that we can also disagree on because we're two separate people. But when you make a covenant, you each put your ping pong ball into the jar together.
The jar is the covenant.
The jar is the covenant. So the jar holds love. It's not love that holds your marriage together. It's a covenant. And in all religions, there are types of covenants and blood covenants. And, you'll understand in the African culture, covenants, they understand blood covenants much better than us pinkies do. And, just from that, Andre puts everything in the bowl. And then what happens when a covenant is broken? And he either drops the jar or he chucks it on the stage behind him. And obviously, as it smashes, everything just bounces all over the place. And how do you pick up all those pieces and put them back together? And it's quite emotional because there's shards of glass. There's pain around that. So that's why we come from, we don't actually know any other way to come for it, except obviously as believers in Christ. But we also get that other people are coming from other places. But we just feel for healthiness. I cannot keep a covenant. Our own ability to keep covenant is terrible as humans. So I don't know how we don't do this without a higher being. But that will explain the safety of what is inside our covenants.
Yeah. All right. So then, in terms of that sex within covenant, we go back to Genesis, then Hebrews, and Revelations. It's between two genders. It's heterosexual, it's monogamous, and it's for the marriage bed, and it's holy, sacred, and precious. And I've studied sexology, and I think for me, I've heard a whole lot of stuff as to what is good sex. And I want to be honest with you, even science is showing that this kind of sex is the most fulfilling. All right. So we don't really have to question this. We don't have to think, are we missing out? All right. God made sex. God made our bodies. God made sexuality. It's not something for us to think that we are missing out at all. Okay. So sex and sexuality, we've just got to quickly put in a framework for this so that you can understand. And also, our real desire is that this will give you vocabulary, folks. This will help you to actually be able to talk about things in your marriage, so you can actually find out more about each other. Remember, intimacy in its purest form is knowing and being known. All right? When we speak about intimacy, it's not about sexual intimacy only. All right? Intimacy is knowing and being known. So what we are giving you today is vocabulary to know and be known. All right. And if that can create that safe space out of which sex can become a reality, well, that is amazing. Okay. So please hear that. So we start with sexuality, and it's quite scary when you think of the early believers in Greece, in Thessalonica. They lived in a hypersexualized world. So many people say to me, oh, you can't bring this or whatever because the world is not like it is today. Well, I want to say there's a great man called Solomon who said there is nothing new under the sun. And if you go back to what the sexual practices were in Greece, they were wild. Okay, at the temple of Aphrodite, they had over 1,000 prostitutes. And you know what? They knew that if you could get somebody to have sex with a prostitute, you had their heart. You got their seed, you had their heart. Okay, so here we've got Paul, who's writing to these new believers in Thessalonica, and he says to them, avoid sexual immorality, that each of you should learn to control your own body in a way that is holy and honorable, not in passionate lusts like the pagans. And it goes on to say, in so doing, that you actually hurt your brother or your sister. Okay? So sexuality is absolutely natural, and we all need to realize, how do we keep out of sexual immorality? We learn to control our own body. If we're going to learn to control our own body, I want to say all of us need to know what we have. Okay? We need to know how it works. We need to understand how it actually gets aroused and how it can be used. And we need to know that for ourselves before we expect anybody else to know it. Okay. So sexuality is completely natural. It's a very broad term. Okay. It includes our whole body from our head to our toes. Okay. It includes our lifelong experience. It doesn't only get turned on at puberty or when we get married. Okay, they found out that little boys have erections in the womb, little girls have engorged labia. Okay, I don't know what God's doing in that process, but it starts in the womb and it ends when we die. Okay, so that is sexuality. Nobody has chosen to have a sexuality. It is part of our lives. All right, sexuality involves all our thoughts, our feelings, and our emotions about what our genitals mean. Okay, that is sex itself. It's gender identity, gender roles, gender orientation, gender preference. It involves eroticism. It involves pleasure. It involves intimacy, reproduction. Okay, it involves dating. It involves relationships. And believe it or not, what is between our legs and on our chests affects every one of those things. All right, and we often don't realize that it does. But we've actually grown up with a script around all of these things. So we always say, if it were between God and ourselves, we'd get the blueprint from God and it would be fantastic. But all the things in the circle of that diagram speak to the way that we perceive our sexuality and how we live it. Our culture, we know that lovely statement that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Okay. All right, where we lived, where we've grown up, the country in which we live, it actually causes us to have an opinion and the way that we use our sexuality, the laws of our land, the society in which we live, the community in which we live. Just in Cape Town, we're in the northern suburbs. There's a different way of believing around sexuality to what's in Khayelitsha and to the southern suburbs. Okay. Religion obviously speaks very clearly about the way we should be using our sexuality, our biology, the relationships that we have. All of these things feed a script into us concerning our sexuality. And it's for us to actually work out what is the most healthy way in which we can use our body, understand it, learn to control it, so that it doesn't hurt anybody else. Okay, so that is sexuality, and it's very natural. Okay, so, okay, where are we? I am going way
well, Andre's
beyond.
looking for us.
There we go.
So sexuality is completely natural.
On the vine.
But sex is sacred. So they're two separate topics. And I just want to tell you, I was so offended when Andre, I understood he was studying sexuality because there's just so much trouble in the world and we're tired of just not knowing how to help teenagers, particularly around this area. And I just said, but the word sexuality was so offensive to me. So I could just take those 3 little letters out the front and call it youality. And Andre says, but there isn't a word. I said, let's create a word called youality. It's just about being you. How do we make people the best you? And then from there, it was, we realized, well, what happens if I was born as a boy? What happens if you was born as a girl? How different? So how different would your life be if you were born with different parts? And then you just see how your education would be different, how everything would be different. So sexuality is completely natural. We cannot leave our private parts out. It needs to have the word sex in front of the duality, but understanding that sexuality is completely natural, whereas sex itself is sacred. So when we look at the picture of the vine, which is in front of you, as Andre was saying, sexuality is about, if this is your life, and imagine this as your life only, don't think of your partner at this stage. You were planted in a soil. So there's actually a preconception situation out of which you were born, whether it's out of rape or whether it was you were wanted, a child, whatever. There's a soil and a circumstance into which you were born. And from there, the roots start to grow for this tree, depending on how rocky and healthy the soil is. So we look at healthy sexuality development, which we'll carry on another day. But just so that you can see, in sexuality comes from preconception all the way through to when you are born, which is when the little tree trunk comes above the soil, the vine sticks out there and there's a shoot, and like there's hope, yes. And your reception there is actually your family are there. Is it a boy? Is it a girl? Were you was it expected? Or the wrong thing? Were you a mistake? Did nobody want you? That's going to affect your sexuality, and that's going to affect whether this vine goes skew there or gets chopped with an axe there. There's a lot of things that can go on through your life. So as the vine grows, you'll see that there's the age of 3 is very important. Just going through, anyway, I'm getting lost on the development.
You're
That's
excited,
another day.
more excited than I am about this. Okay.
But understanding it as it grows, so what we do is as it grows up, you'll see that eventually this vine will bear fruit. And the fruit is about sex. The fruit is what you have to give to your partner to eat. So they'll see some of the stages I've mentioned there going up. So sex is when you exchange the fruit. And hopefully you choose to pick the fruit when it's ripe. And it's not damaged in the process of picking, and that you have the opportunity to share the fruit. And that's the fruit is the symbol of the blood covenant. And that's why, as believers, we take communion. It's the fruit of the vine, but it's representing blood. To say, actually, I'll give you my blood, you give me your blood. Now, actually, if anyone separates this covenant, we deserve to die. And isn't that what separated man and God? We deserve to die because we all sin. So we all on the same page. Right. So
let's just say that the fruit is only as good as us having dealt with and understood our bodies and how to control them. All right. If we have not done that, it's very difficult to have a good picking. All right. So, if we look at the act of sex, we've got to understand that it's not only things I've done in the last 2 weeks or the last 2 months. There's been a whole development that has affected the way I perceive myself and my sexuality and my body, that is going to affect the fruit that can be picked, which should be wonderful, wonderful sex at the end of the day. And we've got to understand all of those things. And we go through that in a lot of depth in one of our other workshops.
So trust is developed as the fruit appears above the ground. That's actually where trust is developed. It's developed at your mother's breast. How you were that early bonding and whether you were soothed or whatever, but that's also for another day.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's just explain quickly, why is sex sacred? Why do we say it's sacred? Because it's actually one of the closest and most precious moments of sharing and being one with another person. And it's sharing not just your physical body, it's your emotions, it's your soul and your spirit. And that is with someone you love and someone with whom you have made covenant. Now that is what good, healthy sex is. And that's why we say it is sacred. Okay. Yep.
So sacred, as you'll see, and for those who read the Old Testament, you'll understand those temples, shrine, prostitutes. At every place of worship, there's something that's given. Often in some religions, you bring literally fruit to leave in the temple. But understanding that God had a plan for intimacy with man, and how we see the sacredness also is represented how God, the story of Moses. God said, I want to come and meet with man, but actually I need a place to go into. So he said, Moses, make a tabernacle. And then he gave him all these directives of how he's going to make these bits and pieces of the tabernacle. And it was God's intention to be intimate with man, to communicate. And as we look at, there's a diagram.
There isn't.
Isn't there a diagram?
No.
Oh gosh, there's a diagram of the temple. I don't know if you'd be able to see this on an iPad.
No, you can't.
No, you
No.
can't. Right, never mind. So basically it was a tent with a different section. And as people prepared to come to worship, they said, come on, let's go up to the mount of the Lord. We're going to go pray or praise. There was a lot of praise. There was agreement. Let's go to this place of intimacy with our God. And now we're going to, the first thing you do is you enter with thanksgiving. So it's being grateful. So understanding that when you're going to meet with someone, there's intimacy, there's gratitude. Even if you invited somewhere for a meal with friends, let's go. Okay, we agree. Let's go prepare ourselves. There's gratitude. There's thanksgiving. You come together, and obviously, and as you come in there, the temple, there's sacrifice. There's a blood sacrifice. You bring the goat or whatever, and then the blood is shed to say, actually, you don't have to be perfect to get in here because someone else shed the blood for you. And then you go to this little bowl and you wash your hands and you look at yourself, the reflection in the mirrors of this bowl, and it helps you to just self-reflect and to self-cleanse. So if we think of this in terms of a sexual act which is sacred, a sacred place of meeting together, there is a preparation one can do for oneself, even in your own head. Where's your gratitude? Where's your praise of your partner? How do we come into this, place? What am I sacrificing? Actually, I don't feel like sex tonight. You know what? This is going to be good for us. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get ready, wash myself, reflect on myself, get my mind in the right space. And then into the next inner court, God then made every day there to be fresh bread the priest had to make. And that's why the covenant is for the present. There's fresh bread every day. And how do you just be present in the moment? And often that's also what makes sex sometimes bad, is that you're just not present. Your brain is somewhere else, especially the girls. Let's close your eyes and think of something else. So in that space, and also then, anyway, we won't go into the details, but there was a candlelight there and there was incense rising. And what do we do on date nights? We're going to date. We've got the fresh bread and the wine, and we've got the candles and the lovely perfume. So, we know the story. And it was God's first. And then from there, once a year, the priest would go into the Holy of Holies, only the most holy person, into a mysterious place in this Holy of Holies, which was the most intimate place of meeting with the God, who creator. And in that space, something mysterious happened, and there was a bunch of things that went on there. But understanding that that's almost like the holiness of sex. It's going through the curtain into the holy place. So when people get married, what happens? The father lifts the veil from the bride and says to the husband, you are welcome to enter in. I've taken the veil away. You are welcome to enter in. And that's the invitation under which we should have good sex. So there's marriage as a ritual, it's a custom, and there's covenant involved. And as we go into the covenant of nakedness just now, you'll see why that curtain is so important.
Yeah, so I hope this helps you to realize sexuality is very natural, all right? Sexuality, we all have it. Nobody chose it, okay? It's something precious. It's something we need to control, learn to control. And to do that, we need to know what we have, how it works, how it can hurt somebody, how it can hurt ourselves. And that's why there's a scripture that says any sexual sin is a direct violation of our own body. So we need to know about our sexual parts and be aware of our sexuality. All right? Sex is the picking of the fruit. It's the result of lots of layers of development, okay? And there is a safe place of covenant in which sex can be beautiful, and we see that and understand that to be a sacred place. All right, and that's how we are creating this place of trust and safety again. All right, if we actually remember these things, if we work on these things, then we can experience great sex. Now, many of you are probably saying, I came to this thing wanting to know how to have good sex. Well, folks, we're giving it to you. Okay, we're not, no, we're giving to them right now.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we're not speaking about penetration or anything like this. We are actually helping you to create the right environment for God's perfect way to have sex. So this is just very crucial. Now, one of the issues around our sexuality is nakedness. And nakedness, we don't realize, but it has deep consequences for us. All right? wherever we have been naked, wherever we have seen other people naked, we have a mark in our spirit. Okay, it actually does something to us. And so Jen's going to quickly just share a brief overview of the covenant of nakedness.
So as we said, if you have got come from other faiths, just bear with us and see, literally bear because it's naked, on this, and also just see what you can get out of it and relate it to your own faith as well. But we understand in the Adam and Eve story, whether it's literal or figurative, doesn't really matter. God was intimate with man. They walked and talked together. Adam and Eve were not ashamed of their nakedness, and they did work. So they worked naked as well. And so in that place, the first thing that happened when they took from the knowledge of good and evil, okay, good and evil is about right or wrong. It's about punishment and reward. So the minute they took from that, they realized that they were naked and they were ashamed. And how did they know, to be ashamed when they sinned? And so suddenly nakedness became wrong. And what happened? They were kicked out of the garden, and God.
No. They weren't kicked out.
They weren't kicked out of the garden yet. God was going to kick them out the garden. So in His kindness, He decided.
No. What did they do though?
Oh,
so obviously
they got fig leaves.
Yeah.
I imagine sewing together these fig leaves.
Yeah.
And how prickly are some of those leaves? Imagine trying to walk in that thing that you've sewn together. I mean, hilarious.
Nettles on those leaves.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
you don't want to do nettles. But anyway, the fig obviously was a good one, but they also would have figured that it didn't really work well. So anyway, what God is in His case is like, oh no, now these guys, I've got to chuck them out the garden. I said this and now they disobeyed me. I'm going to have to. I don't want to, but I have to kick them out the garden. But they're going to be cold out there. It's not like here. It's going to be cold and terrible. So in His kindness, He became the first underwear designer, his and hers, matching underwear. We call it the Victoria's Secret. Anyway, so then he gets his animal skins, but this is the first shedding of blood that is mentioned in the Bible. And you see the blood covenant. God used blood to cover their nakedness. And that's why we've started on sex is about covenant, covering your parts. And so God made these lovely things and said, cheers, guys, out of the garden. Sorry, you can't come back in.
But He didn't leave them.
He didn't leave them alone.
That's important to realize. They had to leave the garden, but He did not leave them. Okay.
Yeah, they had to. Yeah, that's following through. That's an issue for discipline and children, all that jazz. So then we go on to later. What happened is that God wanted to relate to man, but He related to man through priests and prophets and all those guys. And He gave these rules to the priests. And He said to them, when you go into the temple to do the sacrifice, like we spoke of just now, He said, you need to put on pure garments to go into that space. And I want you to wear linen, not animal skins. I want you to wear linen. So we're back to plant coverings. And it's so that you don't sweat. Remember?
This is the underwear.
Yeah, this is the underwear that's made. So the priest had to wear the special sacred tunic, and then he had to tie it up, and he had to wear a turban on his head and whatever, and then this robe. And then he said to the priest, you go into this holy place, but when you come out, you need to take these holy clothes off. And then it continues to say, there's a scripture on the screen there somewhere. He said, lest you go into public, and that garment,
the undergarment,
purifies the people. So here's God talking about underwear. Did you know there's underwear story in the garden? I mean, in the Bible. So go and look at nakedness through the Bible. It's quite fascinating. Go and look at this story of this tunic. And then as we go later into the Psalms, you can see that there is a prophecy in Psalm 22 where David writes a psalm, and he says, that here I am, my body's on display on the cross. And he said, and they will cast lots for my garments. They will tear my robe and cast lots for my undergarments. Now imagine the shame you bear naked on a cross later when you look at Jesus in the John story. On the cross, there's a covenant. He becomes the lamb that gets slain, and He needs to restore nakedness. And the only way to restore nakedness, to get intimacy again with the Father, so His dad could be our dad again, is that so we could walk and talk with Him naked with no shame, was that He died naked. Obviously they can't show that on the pictures in the churches, that, His penis is hanging out. The shame of lying there on the cross, and He says, all my bones on display. I mean, yeah. Anyway, and then people casting lots. Imagine the shame of Him with that underwear that was taken into a public place to make people holy. And what happened as He died, that curtain was torn, and the Holy of Holies became available to everybody. to now do that. So that's just in a summary of why nakedness is a covenant. And so out of this, on the other side of this transformation is, where is it safe to be naked? Everything that's ever happened to you in horrible, whatever, there's been whippings and beatings of Jesus, all he went through for the cross. I don't know what happened when he wasn't stripped naked and that Roman soldiers were drunk there. Whatever has happened to you is covered. It's whatever you've gone through in your whole life around shame, nakedness, mocking is covered. And there's a restoration that can be had.
Yeah, and folks, this is where we can ask some real questions, all right? And you can answer them by yourselves, but how did your parents cope with their nakedness in front of you? Believe it or not, that has a huge impact on us. You know, were they overly prissy, very conservative? Were they overly, you know, free and liberal? Okay, that really affects the way we see ourselves and affects the way that we actually use our bodies at the end of the day. Another thing would be, how did your family cope with nakedness in general? Okay, were you able to be naked with your brothers and sisters? Until what age? Were you able to swim naked? When you went to extended family, was nakedness allowed? And then the big question is, how did people perceive the nakedness? And that just introduces our next point, which is just really helpful, and it also then covers the whole issue of pornography. You all know about Noah. He made the ark and all those kinds of things, okay? But in Genesis 9, it speaks about Noah actually planted this grapevine or this bunch of vineyards, okay? And he got terribly drunk, and he eventually came home, and in his drunken stupor, he fell asleep naked, all right? And he was lying there, and Ham, his youngest son, went in, and he was so shocked by seeing his dad, Noah, lying there naked, that he ran outside. Now, he then spoke to his brothers, Japheth and Shem, and he said, hey, you guys, you know, Dad, okay? He spoke to his brothers about what he saw. And it must have been something fairly graphic, because his brothers decided, we're not going to look at it. We are going to go in backwards, and we're going to cover his nakedness. So when Noah wakes up, I don't know what kind of bubblus he had, but anyway, he wakes up, he goes outside, and he hears what happened whilst he was asleep. And he hears that his sons Japheth and Shem covered his nakedness. But Ham went in, saw him, and spoke to his brothers about it. And there's something about that interchange which is crucial for us to understand. Ham took what he saw, and he made a lot of it. He allowed his mind to make a lot of it, and it was so shocking that his brothers covered it. And then Noah gets up and he says, Japheth and Shem, because of what you did, you will always be the leaders, you will be the head and not the tail. Ham, because of what you did, and it's not because of him looking at nakedness alone, it's what he did with it. You will always be cursed. You will always be the servant. Now, folks, this is where we've got to realize nakedness is a big deal. When we've seen nakedness, it's very hard for us to not, ruminate on it, do something with what we've seen, and we've got to be so careful with what we do with what we have seen, because in an instant, we can come under the curse of slavery. Now, I want to say that is exactly what pornography does. All right? It's looking at nakedness, and it is causing something to go on in our minds, and it creates slavery. Okay? So I'm not wanting to lay heavy burdens and I don't even want to convict anybody. The Holy Spirit convicts, all right? But I think it's just very helpful for us to realize we all have a script around nakedness.
A story.
Okay,
Yeah,
a story.
Yeah.
And we need to actually go back and consider, how has this affected the way we deal with our own bodies, the way we have allowed ourselves maybe to consider nakedness of other people or other things. And we need to take responsibility for that story or that script of nakedness, because it's actually one of covenant. And if we break it, it creates a lot of problems.
So the good news is that all of this is redeemable, and
Yeah.
but it's also understanding. So what we also talk about, but not today, is why people need pornography, because the porn is wrong. Yeah, it does not helpful in marriages at all. We all know that, but we also know that there's a reason why people do it, and the reason is the thing that will drive the need for it. And so we look at it from a what is healthy and where things gone wrong, that puts you in a position that you feel like you need it. There's a deeper thing within your sexuality development that you need to feel in control of something, or you need to whatever, that will then precipitate the need for porn. And that's a need for any comfort, you know, whether it's food or whether it's music or whether it's spending or whatever brings you that sense of control. There's an addiction there. So pornography is addiction, just like every other addiction. It's there to cover pain.
Yeah.
So where there's porn, it means there's deep pain and shame.
And a lot of that deep pain and shame is around the covenant of nakedness. It's around the covenant of how we have dealt with it in our lives, and how we've even dealt with it in marriage. And so, folks, yeah, we can go through this, but I really just want to stop here for a bit. Let's just take a breath, all right? The whole purpose for what we are doing is to talk about things that we often don't talk about. When it comes to nakedness, when it comes to what is sex, when it comes to what is sexuality, all of these things are very foreign to many of us. But the way we think and feel about these things causes us to do wild things, stupid things, all right? And we've really got to go back. We've got to think about, how has this marked my spirit? How has this caused me to believe lies? And, you know, we all have lies that are our truths.
Mistruths, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if those are our lies, okay, they are, and we can, and I want to be honest, I carry, and I humbly carry lies as my truths that I still live with and that I'm still willing to defend. But you know what? There is the ultimate truth. Okay. And we've got to realize that as believers, as people that have a sexuality, we always need to allow our lie or our truth to submit to a greater truth. But I do want to say that we cannot wait. We cannot wait for our truth to become the truth before we engage in intimacy with anybody else. I'm not only talking about sex. Please hear me. I'm talking about just getting close with somebody. What I am saying is we've got to realize we are all on a journey. As long as we are humbly looking at our mistruths and our lies, and in this case about our sexuality and about sex and nakedness, if we are humbly looking at that and drawing closer and closer to submitting so that God's truth becomes our reality, then we can enjoy intimacy. But perfection this side of heaven is not going to happen. All right? But as long as we are following covenant, there's a rugged commitment. Okay, 4x4s go up and down. All right, a rugged commitment. Okay, it is for the present. My yesterdays do not define my today. My fear of tomorrow does not define my today. As long as there is advocacy, I am here not for myself. And here we go to 1 Corinthians 13, that beautiful scripture about love. Love is patient, love is kind, love does not keep a record of wrongs. Love always hopes, it is not proud. All right? That is a beautiful scripture for protection around our sexuality and sex. Okay? So that is also advocating. All right? And then finally, our sexuality and our sex always needs to be bringing out the best of who God made us to be. It is transformative. And if there's anything I am expecting, if there is anything that I am just wanting from Jen that is not going to transform her into a better version of herself before the Lord, I have to run a mile, because then I will be put into the hands of the living God. And we're told that's a woeful space. Okay. So I really hope, folks, this is building into a treasure trove of vocabulary for you to be able to talk about what happened. Man, oh man, when I was a little boy and I was thin, and my dad said to me, Andy, go and put a shirt on because you've got such a skinny body. Man, oh man, oh man.
In a family of rugby players.
Yes, in a family of rugby players, and I could not play rugby because I was the runt of the litter. I was 6 weeks premature and I was thin and scrawny. Okay? That has spoken to the way I have perceived my body, my nakedness, how I can be a husband, how I can even love Jen. And you know what?
How you can be a colleague, how you react in the sports team,
Yeah.
how you know, those things, they affect every area of your life, but it's related to your sexuality.
And you know what? I can blame my dad, and he's dead now.
But he did love you.
He did love me. I can blame him until the cars come home, until I choose to take control of it. I choose to not allow it to define me anymore. And that's the beautiful thing about covenant. It is for now. All right. Jen wants to say something.
Do
Yeah.
I?
Yes.
I just
Yeah.
think, you know, that through this, I hope you can come away and see that there are stories. So of going back to the picture of the vine, in some cultures, nakedness is fine. You know, in Germany, you can go swimming naked next to your school teacher at the public swimming bath. It's not a problem. But, you know, and so different cultures, different ways people said about your nakedness, or don't touch that, or, you know, this will happen, you know, your penis will fall off if you masturbate, or little girls are aroused, and girls don't know they're aroused, you know, and maybe you're aroused too young, you know, and so there are things that will arouse you that you'll just think is so strange. But how do you then, out of your stories, realize what is helpful in your marriage and what isn't? What's helpful in your sex vocabulary? So yeah, but that's also for another day. You know, looking at great sex because of how wonderful our bodies have been made. So just knowing, you know, all our bits and pieces are made by God with the right chemicals to do the right things at the right times for our enjoyment and pleasure and reproduction and just intimacy. And the more sex you can have within covenant, the tighter you will bond, and you can grow in your sex vocabulary. We had a date night and there were 70-year-olds there, and they said, oh, we had our best sex in our 60s. So it was just knowing that this is a lifelong commitment that you can really grow in, and remember that everything can be redeemed. Everything has fallen, but everything can be redeemed and restored. So just to say there's hope. Here we stand. We both have issues from our past. We grew up in different gender role things, you know, from our family situations. And yeah, and here we sit talking about sex and sexuality.
We've got to get to the cliffhanger. Okay, rightio, folks. So when we meet again, all right, we are going to be talking more about the sexual act, okay? And please, I hear triggers going, I see red flags flying, all right? But I hope that what we've done today has positioned what we're going to do next time in a safe place for you. All right? We're going to be looking at reclaiming safety to enjoy sex. Okay? Briefly, for you to know, we'll be looking at the sexual cycle. We'll be looking at desire, excitement, plateau, orgasm, and resolution. What is healthy sex? What can be my expectations? What should be my expectations? And if I look at each one of those things, how have those been marred? How have those been really dirtied by my experience in life? And then we're also going to be looking at how men and women are very, very different when it comes to the sexual act. And, you know,
And
many
sexual cycles.
yeah, and so often people say, why the heck are men and women so different? Well, I think it goes back to the fact that love is patient, love is kind, love doesn't keep a record of wrongs. And so we should be often coming from the opposite poles, because then it just helps us to enjoy sex better and also appreciate each other better. So that's going to be next time. Please, it's not going to be graphic. It's not like we are going to be, you know, exposing anybody or anything. All right? We really are just trying to create a safe place for that to be enjoyed. Okay. Thanks, Kevin and Michelle.
Excellent. Thank you, Andre and Jen. That was really amazing to see, you know. So don't worry, people. I won't be sharing any of my self-homemade how to do this videos next time. So we'll leave those behind.
That's a relief. People
Yeah, I
might
know.
not stay away now.
No. It'll be a horror story that no one wants to see that. I don't even want to see that. Yeah, no. But
Well,
really,
you
it's
guys have left us on a serious cliffhanger,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
so sorry we're not going into a whole next session so we
Yes.
could learn straight away. Like,
yes. Maybe we should just grab a cup of coffee, hit the next session. Yeah, no. Okay, maybe next time.
Okay, so and Jen, I know that we haven't gone into the whole thing, but there was a question on the group asking. It was asking, I'm trying to remember.
And is sex only talking about penetrative sex?
So I know you're going to go into it, but maybe you want to just quickly give a little.
Okay.
Sexuality.
Okay, sex is not only penetrative sex, all right? And I think we've got to realize that. Sex, the sexual act is desire, excitement, plateau, orgasm. That's so, and we'll go into it in more detail. Anytime there is orgasm, anytime there is ejaculation, one's got to realize there is connection. And if we understand that the outcome of sex is to create connection, therefore, every time there is orgasm and there is ejaculation, there is a connecting, there is a bonding. Okay, that happens not only through penetration. So I think we've got to realize that. But I also just want to say very, very frankly, let's not create rules and let's not demonize things, folks. I really want to make that clear. We are not here to provide information that can be used as a barb or a weapon against anyone.
Or a knowledge of good and evil.
Okay, so anyway, but that's, I hope that answers well enough.
But I think when you do we talk about the courtship cycle, it's also about, you know, when are you sexually aroused? Because then that is the indication of if it's sexual arousal on purpose, that's, yeah,
it's good.
Yeah,
it's
that's,
good.
it's good in covenants, and outside of covenants, it ain't good.
It can be problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you are aroused outside of covenant, and it's not a sin.
And it's not a sin.
Let's move on.
Because your body is made to do that.
Okay, good.